Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we travel back to the Middle Ages, visiting what is undoubtedly the most famous castle in Poland, the impressive Malbork Castle. And if you like our video, do not forget to like it, subscribe and activate notifications so that you know when we upload a new video. From the beautiful city of Gdansk, and just a short distance away, as they are only separated by about 60 kilometers by road, we arrived at what is undoubtedly the most famous castle in Poland and one of the most famous in Europe, which is none other than the impressive Malbork Castle. After a good breakfast, which will be necessary since the visit to the castle is not exactly short, we set off to begin the tour, a route that is easy to follow by sticking to the line of tourists. The castle was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1997, and built as a military fortress by the Order of the Teutonic Knights. It is a masterpiece of military and civil architecture, and the largest brick Gothic fortress in the world. It has its origins in the 13th century, when the Knights of the Teutonic Order settled in this place in Poland, protected by the Nogat River. With the arrival of the Grand Master, expansions also took place, turning it into a fortified castle and the capital of a powerful monastic state, which wielded its power until the 13 Years' War, when it came under Polish control and became a royal residence. Later, it was occupied by Prussian troops and became one of the bases of the German army during World War II, at the end of which it was practically destroyed, with the Russians subsequently razing all its facilities. Since then, restoration work has been carried out, which was completed in 2016 and gives it its current appearance. The castle is divided into three parts: the lower castle, the middle castle and the upper castle, starting the visit with the lower castle, which we access through a beautiful drawbridge, and which had a basically economic and servitude function, and where it finds the arsenal and the old chapel of San Lorenzo, as well as numerous agricultural outbuildings. A large square surrounded by medieval buildings welcomes us to the middle castle, where the palace of the Grand Masters stands out above all. We began the visit to the middle castle in the infirmary, which served as a refuge for old and sick knights, and it had its own dining hall, chapel, and bath. Part of the infirmary rooms was adapted in 2006 to host the exhibition 3 Centuries in Poland, which covers the period from 1454 to 1772, when the castle belonged to Poland and served as an important administrative and economic center within the country. In the year 1772, the castle was taken by the Prussians, who, according to the Partition Treaty, occupied all of Royal Prussia except Gdansk. In this exhibition, we can observe engravings, oil paintings, handcrafted and numismatic objects, as well as Baroque sculptures, in addition to numerous reproductions of documents related to the castle and the city. Through a narrow tunnel, we descend to the so-called kitchen and chef's chamber, where the dishes destined for the grand refectory were prepared. We then visited the refectory itself, marveling at its interior, which is estimated to accommodate around 400 people. Additionally, we discovered the advanced and efficient heating system of the premises. We now move on to the chapel of the Grand Masters, the private chapel of the highest dignitaries of the order. Through a hallway with a high ceiling and large windows, we enter the summer refectory, one of the most beautiful rooms in the palace, which has witnessed many important ceremonies and meetings, as it served as an audience hall where the Grand Master received foreign messengers and distinguished guests. Stepping out again into the central courtyard, we entered another of the rooms, the Chancellery of the Grand Masters, where the Archive and the Chancellery of the Order were located, one of the most important Teutonic dependencies, and where all the administrative work was carried out, which is presented to us in a beautiful exhibition. We went out again to the central courtyard and visited another of the rooms, where the so-called Amber Contexts exhibition is set up, featuring one of the most valuable amber collections in the world. In this exhibition, we will learn how amber originates and is processed, from artifacts produced in the Neolithic period to the present day, encompassing everything from small objects to carved figures of various sizes, boxes, jewelry, and even large structures such as altarpieces, coffins, and reliquaries. It is important to note that amber became the source of the commercial power of the Teutonic Order in the Middle Ages, whose trade represented half of the order's business volume. They held a monopoly and even conquered Gdansk to control the sales points, charging tolls for its transport on ships along the Nogat River. After visiting this spectacular museum, we entered another exhibition, the so-called Malbork Armory, which showcases European weaponry from the 11th century to the mid-19th century, where we can admire a large collection of swords, crossbows, firearms, and numerous suits of armor. Here we also find another weapons exhibition dedicated to the East, showcasing Eastern weapons from Persia, Turkey, and India from the 17th to the 20th centuries, characterized by rich decorative elements and meticulous craftsmanship. Exiting through a beautiful hall where a shop is located, we arrive again at the central courtyard, where we conclude our visit to the middle castle. After passing by the statues of the four Grand Masters, a drawbridge that crosses the large moats takes us to the upper castle. If the lower castle concentrated economic and service activities, the middle castle housed the residence of the Grand Master and served as the political and administrative center. The upper castle was the monastic area. We first visited the chapel of Saint Anne, which was designated as the funeral chapel for the Grand Masters. Starting in 1341, the mortal remains of the highest dignitaries of the order were placed in the crypt beneath the floor, totaling 11 Grand Masters, who are today remembered by the 3 original tombstones of 3 of them. Walking along the walls of the castle, we came across another of the permanent exhibitions called the Mill, which houses original and modern equipment from a monastic mill dating back to the late 18th century. However, these elements were not the originals from the castle's water-powered mill, which was reconstructed in 1902. In the latest reconstruction, a set of wooden mechanisms from a dismantled horse mill near Malbork was utilized. Through a tunnel, we accessed the central courtyard of the High Castle, a magnificent inner courtyard that features 2 levels of arcades, and in its center stands a well with a pelican that represents Christ. From this courtyard, we entered the premises and found the permanent exhibition of 19th century stained glass, which showcases windows made between 1981 and 1893, although some date back to the Middle Ages. These were dismantled from various churches in Poland to prevent their looting by the Germans during World War II. We then entered the large kitchen of the convent, dominated by a great bell, under which the food was prepared, and transported by elevator along the south wall to the second floor where the dining hall is located. As a curiosity, the scenery of this place changes periodically, depending on the Teutonic calendar that regulates the order of festivals and celebrations, as well as the days of fasting and normal periods, determining the types of food that could appear on the tables of the clergy on those days. We now move on to the chapter house, which in the Middle Ages was adjacent to the refectory, and whose current architecture dates back to the Restoration period, between the years 1882 and 1890. Near the chapter house, we find the Church of the Most Holy Virgin Mary, which we access through the so-called Golden Door. This is the only part of the fortress that has not been restored, and visiting it is essential to understand the condition the place was in before efforts began to restore its glory. After visiting this spectacular chapel, we access another exhibition through a lovely hallway, titled 200 Years of Conservation of Malbork Castle, 1817 to 2017, which presents the history of the reconstruction and conservation efforts of the interior walls and furnishings of Malbork Castle since 1817, the year when King Frederick William III of Prussia officially initiated the first restoration of the castle. Next, we move to the convent's refectory, which initially did not serve as a refectory but rather as a storage room. As a refectory, it consisted of 2 rooms, the the long dining hall of the convent and a lounge for after-meal conversations. In the dining hall, the daily meals were served, which consisted of 2 courses, while the fasting meals consisted of only 1. We now move on to another of the permanent exhibitions, the so-called stained glass windows of the Great Refectory from the 19th and 20th centuries, which features stained glass from the Great Refectory that originally displayed heraldic windows from 1820, later replaced, between 1908 and 1910, by windows with figures. We conclude our visit to the castle here, and upon stepping outside, we come across the Gdansk Tower, one of the oldest buildings of the castle, which in the Middle Ages served as the main restroom, but also as a final defense tower. And on the banks of the Nogat River, we concluded our visit to this impressive castle, which you should definitely set aside a few hours for if you are touring Poland.